Has this ever happened to you? The doorbell rings. Someone wants to come in, sit down, chat for a while. And instead of feeling pleased, something inside you tightens. A quiet resistance. A small voice that just wants to say, not today. You don't hate people. You're not angry at the world. You just don't enjoy having guests. You'd rather keep your quiet evening, your own rhythm, your own space. If that sounds like you, stick around, because today we're talking about something most people never say out loud. And no, this doesn't make you rude, cold, or antisocial. According to Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, this reaction might be pointing to something much deeper about how your mind is wired. In this video, we'll go through several Jungian ideas that explain why some people genuinely struggle with having visitors, and why that struggle can actually be a sign of something healthy happening inside you. Before we continue, if any of this already feels familiar, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Does the idea of someone showing up unannounced make your stomach drop a little? I'd love to know. Carl Jung was the one who first introduced the idea of introversion and extroversion into psychology. But he wasn't really talking about being shy or being a party animal. He was describing the direction in which a person's mental energy naturally flows. For some people, energy flows outward, toward people, conversations, noise, new stimulation. Being around others recharges them. For other people, energy flows inward. Their battery refills in silence, in solitude, in their own thoughts. When they're exposed to too much external stimulation, long talks, surprise visitors, noise, their inner system starts to shut down. Not from arrogance, from necessity. So if visits drain you, that's not a flaw in your character. It's simply how your inner energy is built. And if you lean introverted, which is far more common than people admit, your home isn't just four walls. It's more like a private sanctuary, a space where your mind sorts itself out and finds balance again. When someone steps into that space, even with the kindest intentions, they brush against things you've spent all day quietly arranging inside yourself. Their presence pulls you into your social self. And that pull, away from your real self, is tiring. Jung had a name for the hidden part of us that reacts to all of this. He called it the shadow. The shadow is the part of your psyche you're mostly unaware of, yet it quietly shapes your reactions, your discomforts, your gut feelings. When a visitor steps into your home, you're not just opening a door. You're letting someone into the space where your inner world is most exposed. And most sensitive. That's exactly where the shadow gets activated. The shadow holds everything you've pushed aside. Old fears, memories you'd rather not revisit, parts of yourself you've never fully looked at. Picture this. Someone comes over. You're sitting together, talking, and instead of feeling relaxed, something feels off. You can't quite explain why. Maybe it's their tone, their energy, the way they carry themselves. And without realizing it, that touches something buried inside you. Jung often pointed out that whatever we refuse to face consciously doesn't just vanish. It tends to show up in our lives anyway, often disguised as circumstance, or what we call fate. Sometimes that shows up as a wave of irritation during a perfectly normal visit, or an overwhelming urge for the person to just leave already. That's not bad manners. That's your unconscious mind trying to protect something. But here's the thing. The shadow isn't only made of dark stuff. It also holds potential. Talents, truths, and parts of yourself you haven't had the courage to fully step into yet. The more energy you spend staying polite, adapting, performing socially, the less room there is for your inner self to actually breathe. So if you constantly crave alone time, if the idea of guests feels heavy, maybe your inner self is simply asking for quiet, for space, for you. And listening to that request takes a kind of quiet courage. You know that exact feeling of finally getting home after a long day? Closing the door, kicking off your shoes, taking a breath, and just existing again? In Jungian psychology, your home isn't just a physical space. It's a symbol of your inner world. It reflects your psychological state. So when someone enters your home, in a way, they're entering more than your living room. They're stepping into something symbolically much bigger. Jung believed symbols often reveal more about us than words do, and the house is one of the richest symbols of the human psyche. Each room can represent a different part of you. The bedroom, your private, intimate self. The living room, the social mask you wear for others. The kitchen, your emotional nourishment. The basement, your unconscious mind. The attic, your higher thoughts, ideals, aspirations. And the front door, the boundary between your inner world and everyone else's. When someone crosses that threshold, on some level, your unconscious registers it as outside energy entering your space. Their thoughts, their emotional baggage, their tension. If you're naturally sensitive, introverted, or simply on a personal growth journey, that foreign energy can feel exhausting. For Jung, your home wasn't meant to be a defense wall against the world. It was more like a mirror of your inner state. If your home feels peaceful, chances are something inside you feels settled too. But if visits disrupt that calm, maybe it's your inner self quietly saying, "I'm still working on myself in here. I'm not ready to fling every door open yet." And that's completely fine. Protecting your space is, in a sense, protecting yourself. And in depth psychology, respecting your own boundaries is considered an essential step toward healing. Have you ever smiled politely while internally just wishing for silence? Made small talk, played the friendly host, while secretly counting the minutes until the visit ends? It can feel a bit harsh to admit, like you're being ungrateful. But Jung gives us a much kinder way to understand this. He called it the persona, the social mask we all wear to interact with the world. It's the version of you adapted for work, for family gatherings, for visitors. The persona isn't fake exactly. It's just limited. It's one slice of who you are, usually the most acceptable slice. The problem is when you're forced to wear that mask in the one place you should be able to take it off, your own home. For people with a strong persona. And that includes a lot of introverted, observant, emotionally attuned people. Hosting a visitor can be genuinely draining. Suddenly you're managing your tone, your expressions, the pace of conversation, even worrying about the dishes in the sink or whether the lighting feels right. All of that quietly drains your mental energy. Jung's point was that the persona is necessary. It helps us function socially. But when we start mistaking that mask for our actual identity, something inside us begins to suffer. That inner resistance you feel before a visit? It's not about disliking the person. It's about not wanting to perform, when all you really want is quiet, bare feet, and a window to stare out of. And here's a truth worth hearing. You're allowed to be fully yourself in your own space. You're allowed to decline a visit. You're allowed to be unreachable sometimes, because constantly trying to please everyone else often means quietly abandoning yourself. There are moments your soul simply asks for stillness, not out of sadness, but as a kind of inner need. In a culture that praises being constantly social, constantly on, that need can feel strange, even shameful. But Jung saw withdrawal very differently. For him, that pull towards solitude often marks the beginning of one of the most meaningful inner journeys a person can take, what he called individuation. Individuation simply means becoming who you actually are. Not who your family expected, not who society rewards, not the mask you've been wearing, but your real self, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, all of it. And this process doesn't happen in noise. It happens in stillness, in retreat, in pause. Jung once put it simply: real loneliness isn't about being physically alone. It's about being unable to express what truly matters to you. And nothing matters more, every once in a while, than finally hearing your own thoughts. You don't withdraw to disappear. You withdraw so you can come back clearer, steadier, more yourself. If any of this feels like it's describing you a little too well, good. That's not a coincidence, and it's definitely not a flaw. Here are 6 ideas from Jungian psychology that might explain why home, quiet, and solitude mean so much to you. 1. You're probably more sensitive to the energy of a space than most people realize. Jung believed the unconscious often picks up on things the conscious mind misses entirely: tone of voice, body language, unspoken tension. When someone enters your home, they bring more than just themselves. They bring their emotional state, their stress, their stories. And you feel that, even if you can't name it. That's tiring. 2. Your mind genuinely needs space to reset. Jung viewed introversion as a natural way of restoring inner order. Time alone helps your thoughts realign. A single unexpected visit can throw that balance off entirely. What looks like laziness from outside is often your system simply trying to catch its breath. 3. Constant social interaction can pull you away from yourself. Jung believed your true self only really emerges in stillness. Endless small talk and friendliness, even when pleasant, can quietly distance you from who you actually are underneath it all. 4. Other people can unintentionally activate your shadow. Sometimes one offhand comment from a visitor leaves you feeling oddly irritated or unsettled, and it's rarely really about them. It's about something unresolved inside you that got touched. 5. This need to withdraw might be the start of something meaningful, your own individuation process. It often begins the exact moment you stop trying to please everyone and start actually listening to yourself. And 6, you're learning to listen to yourself without guilt. Learning to say no, to close the door, to protect your peace, without feeling like you owe anyone an explanation. Every time you're nice when you don't mean it, you give a little piece of yourself away. And deep down, you already know it's time to stop doing that. Picture an old figure, lantern in hand, walking a quiet path through the dark, completely alone, but not lost. This is the image of the Hermit, one of the oldest archetypes in Jungian psychology. Jung described archetypes as universal patterns, energies that live inside all of us, whether we recognize them or not. Picture an old figure, lantern in hand, walking a quiet path through the dark, completely alone, but not lost. This is the image of the Hermit, one of the oldest archetypes in Jungian psychology. Jung described archetypes as universal patterns, energies that live inside all of us, whether we recognize them or not. So what does this have to do with not wanting visitors? More than you'd think. The Hermit represents the inner pull toward withdrawal, reflection, and self-knowledge. It's the impulse that makes you want to shut the door, silence your phone, not to run away from the world, but to finally hear what's happening inside you. The Hermit lives in stillness because that's where clarity tends to appear. This archetype isn't about sad, empty isolation. It's about the courage to look inward, face your own doubts and shadows, and in doing so, find a kind of inner light that no one else can hand to you. And to do that inner work, the Hermit needs a sacred space. And often, that space is simply your home. If you feel that strong pull to avoid guests and just be quiet, maybe that's your inner Hermit asking you to slow down. Not to vanish from the world, but to reconnect with the core of who you are. Jung believed answering that call matters for emotional and mental health. Choosing the Hermit's path is, in its own quiet way, a form of resistance. against constant noise, against shallow interactions, against the pressure to always be available. It's an act of self-respect. So next time someone questions why you'd rather stay home, just remember, your inner hermit is standing there with a lantern, reminding you that real clarity often only comes after you've sat with your own quiet for a while. For Jung, the hermit wasn't a tragic, lonely figure. Quite the opposite. He represented a kind of inner guardian, a keeper of wisdom. When you follow that pull toward solitude, something shifts. That alone time stops being avoidance and starts becoming a space for real growth. In the quiet, you start noticing things the noise usually drowns out. You think more clearly, feel more fully, and slowly begin healing parts of yourself you didn't even realize needed it. In that space, you start recognizing your own patterns, integrating parts of yourself you'd pushed aside, and rediscovering things you'd long forgotten about who you are. You begin building a quieter kind of confidence, one that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. This isn't always easy in a world that praises constant activity and visibility, but the hermit's wisdom is simple. To genuinely show up for others, you first have to show up for yourself. Choosing solitude isn't shutting people out. It's preparing to meet them later as a more grounded, more authentic version of you. So how do you actually balance the need for solitude with the need for connection? Jung's view was that a healthy life isn't about cutting yourself off from people entirely. It's about creating an honest, ongoing dialogue between your need for quiet and your need for connection. The hermit asks for withdrawal and reflection. The world asks for participation. The skill is in honoring both, without forcing yourself into interaction when you're simply not ready. That balance comes from small daily habits, protecting your quiet time through little rituals. A solo walk, an undisturbed morning, time with a book, while also making space for the people who genuinely recharge you rather than drain you. And here's the most freeing part. You don't owe anyone a justification for needing this. Start by noticing your own signals. Are you tired, scattered, irritable? Those are signs your system needs a break. When you notice them, it's okay to slow down, cancel plans, or simply turn off your phone. And when you do need to say something, it can be as simple as, "I'm staying in today. I need some time to myself. The people who care about you will understand." Create a space that's truly yours. A comfortable corner at home, a favorite spot outdoors, a small morning ritual that belongs only to you. This is where you reconnect with yourself, where your inner hermit feels safe. And be gentle with yourself about it. You don't have to be available, social, or on all the time. You're allowed to simply be. Honoring your need for solitude is, in its own way, honoring your whole self, which is exactly the kind of wholeness Jung spent his life writing about. If you take only one thing from this video, let it be this: the way you move through the world, quietly, selectively, protectively of your own space, is completely valid. Your love of stillness isn't something to apologize for. It deserves respect, starting with the respect you give yourself. We've covered a lot today. Jung's ideas on introversion, the shadow, the persona, the path of individuation, and the hermit archetype. But really, this is just a starting point. Take a moment to look inward, gently. Your need for solitude isn't a weakness. It's a sign of a deep inner connection. And your boundaries aren't walls of selfishness. They're acts of genuine self-care. In the quiet of your own space, you have everything you need to keep becoming a little more you every single day.